Cagney James, just hearing the name conjures up pictures of snarling criminals, fists that spark with intensity and lightning-fast hands. His meteoric climb to Hollywood notoriety began the same second he slammed a grapefruit into Mae Clark's face in 1931's The Public Enemy. The ferocity and raw force he displayed captivated the audience. However, there was more to the man than the stereotypical movie tough guy. Above all else, he was a talented farmer, family man, and dancer. James Cagney may be most remembered as an iconic figure in cinema, but his legacy is deeper and more startling than most people think. From his humble beginnings as a street kid in 1899 grimy, bustling New York City to his rise to Hollywood royalty, discover the mysterious life of James Cagney. However, the stereotypical gangster image is deceiving. The early Manhattan of his narrative began in the midst of this melting pot. Just picture it: busy streets, families just trying to make ends meet. The Cagneys were just like everyone else. James Sr., his father, had a spark of that Cagney passion, a will to battle for both the bar and the amateur boxing ring. Carolyn, his mother, inherited resilience from both her Irish ancestry and her father, a Norwegian sea captain. Tragically, two of James's brothers died at a young age, preventing him and his sister from ever settling down. James was the second of 7 children. We got off to a rocky start. James' mother was afraid for his life because he was so weak from the many childhood diseases he endured. Still, tenacity and, as others have put it, motivation sprung from the chaos of anxiety. After relocating to East 79th Street and East 96th Street, the Cagney family continued their search for a better life in the city. His baptism and subsequent farewell to the world took place at St. Francis de Sales Roman Catholic Church, a place he found a home at. The energetic young James was a tornado with his blazing red hair and intense blue eyes. His artistic aspirations drove him to aspire to Columbia University. He was intelligent and inquisitive, and he did well at Stuyvesant High School. Even though he enlisted in the Student Army Training Corps, destiny had other plans. His father was killed in the flu pandemic of 1918. After that, his family couldn't afford the cost of college. College aspirations were consequently shelved. James was utilized as a workhorse for the family. He dabbled in plenty of odd occupations to make ends meet. He had odd jobs as a copy boy, an architect, a doorman at a posh apartment building, and a bellhop at a busy hotel. Everything changed when the job came along. The New York Public Library employed him. It comes to novels, though. He encountered Florence James. Her background was in the theater, and she felt James had exceptional talent. He had boxer-like punches, could hold his own in a brawl, and was known for his renowned tap dance skills on those cellar doors. He had an unglamorous introduction to the film industry. In Brooklyn, his aunt's house was directly across from Vitagraph Studios. James eventually climbed the fence for no other reason than to have a peep inside. Amazingly, he witnessed the filming of a movie that in and earned a movie star role. His brother Harry was a pantomime actor, and Florence James also linked him to the play. Initially, James assisted behind the scenes since he was too timid to perform onstage. After that, Harry once became ill just before his performance. If James was familiar with all the choreography and words, director Florence wanted to know. As it happens, he did. He had seen the warm-ups so many times that he could recite every detail verbatim. That night, he put himself in his brother's position, faced the crowd, and his anxiety vanished. A fortunate turn of events occurred in 1919. A friend of James Cagney's revealed that he had auditioned for the play Every Sailor after seeing him bust a move in Wanamaker's department shop. This wasn't your average show. Men in women's garb made up the chorus. Because James needed money badly, he decided to give it a go. Even though he was only familiar with the Peabody, a very hard dance, he nevertheless managed to make it there. He picked up the other dancers' cues quickly and kept perfectly in step with them. He appeared to have spent weeks practicing for his audition, playing dress-up, transforming into a different person for a bit, and letting his guard down was actually pretty entertaining. Furthermore, a $1.35 weekly income is far more appealing than working at a department store. Seeing her son in a wig didn't excite his mother to the same extent. She was proud, to be sure, but she still wanted him to have a good education. Cagney kept her happy by working a day job that was still full of auditions. He eventually secured a part in Pitter Patter. That increased his weekly wage to a generous $1.55, though he was a nice kid and gave most of it to his mother. Though he was aware he needed more money, he also realized that more concerts meant more success in his industry. Not long after, he secured a weekly salary of $1.55 playing a role in the musical Pitter Patter. However, the salary wasn't the only factor. His future wife, Frances Billy Vernon, was a chorus girl he met. Did whatever was needed, including working as a dresser and carrying bags. Cagney began a 10-year career in vaudeville and Broadway with Pitter Patter. He and Billy went on tour together as Vernon and Nye, a comedic and musical combo. He also filled in for the soon-to-be famous Cary Grant for a little while. While Billy's mom was in California in 1924, the Cagneys took a shot at the Hollywood scene. He started a dancing school. That was a bust. At the major studios, he knocked on doors. Instead of losing, they took a detour back to New York when their funds ran out. The year 1925 was the turning point. Outside looking in cast Cagney in a supporting part. Put dancing on pause. This was high drama. He earned a decent $200 weekly and was a young, tough guy. He blamed his victory on his vibrant red hair and didn't even consider he had a chance. He was adored by the reviewers. It was more than just ability, it exuded an aura. However, success isn't always dependable. Before he met the great George M. Cohan, whom he would portray in Yankee Doodle Dandy, he was performing vaudeville again. The West End version of Broadway gave Cagney his breakthrough role. But someone else took his seat just before he departed. James was about to give up when he and Billy became stuck, broke, and stranded. They opened a dancing school and snagged understudy roles in the Broadway production of the show, all because Billy pushed them to do it. After that, she began to develop her acting and choreography skills with roles in Grand Street Follies and Women Go On Forever. After Women Go On Forever concluded, James Cagney's life began to accelerate. He got a part in Penny Arcade, which starred Joan Blondell, when he was still the director of his dance school. Though they despised it, critics adored James and Joan. Fortunately, vaudeville performer Al Jolson saw the program and sensed filmmaking potential. With one condition, he sold the rights to Warner Brothers when he quickly acquired them. Was not pleased to have their orders taken away, but they consented nonetheless. It was finally official. He was on his way to Hollywood. James, the head honcho at Warner Bros., Jack Warner, was not a fan. In his opinion, James and Joan lacked the acting chops necessary to become Hollywood stars. Absolute nonsense. Warner awarded James a 3-week contract with a hefty $1,500 despite his reservations. The money wasn't the only prize, though. They rebranded Sinner's Holiday as Penny Arcade for a long time. He played the role of the rugged hero, the one whose hardships in the past made him sympathetic even now. Playing the same part over and over again didn't bother James. It made him thrilled to know that they would contact him whenever they required an obnoxious character on screen. He persisted in his ascent to Hollywood superstardom. Playing Edward Woods' faithful sidekick, he won a supporting role in the blockbuster film The Public Enemy. The director had a private conversation with James a few days into filming. He likely felt a sinking feeling in his gut as he anticipated terrible news. However, he was met by an unexpected and shocking event. They were to switch roles at the director's request. Suddenly, James had a job offer from a nearby eatery. In a scene that continues to stun people to this day, James, the star, was about to be immortalized. The Public Enemy's notorious grapefruit scene has become famous for a good cause. While eating breakfast, James gives his on-screen wife, Mae Clark, the evil eye. Out of nowhere, his frustration reaches a boiling point, and he smashes a grapefruit against her. The story goes that the reaction really happened. Clark was caught off guard. The fact that he kept returning back to the theater to relive that scene shows how much her spouse enjoyed it. It seems James may be just as challenging away from the camera. Douglas Fairbanks Jr., the famed actor, was spearheading a charity effort while filming. James, along with everyone else on set, was to donate, according to him. Though James was willing to provide a hand to a worthy cause, he had issue with being coerced into doing so. His moniker, the professional gangster, came from his reputation making antics like this. Despite this, his career was unaffected. Audiences yearned for that violent scene following the grapefruit incident. Warner Brothers was more than delighted to grant their request. For James Cagney, it was that grapefruit scene that shifted everything. His erratic and edgy energy was contagious. As a result, Warner Brothers was pleased to participate. He goes so far as to slap his female co-star in Smart Money, his upcoming film. Still, a major snag remained on the horizon for Hollywood. Movies, according to some, were becoming too controversial. The Hays Code, a set of guidelines for what could be considered acceptable screen content, was their creation. Those iconic sequences starring Cagney as the strong guy, the code almost rendered them inoperable permanently. To keep their golden boy employed, Warner Brothers had to quickly shift gears. What was their plan B? He was amusing and blonde crazy, which reunited him with Joan Blondell. Viewers loved it when Cagney let his playful side show. But that didn't mean there weren't any problems. His pay wasn't commensurate with his achievements, at least not publicly. He had lined the pockets of the studio with hit after hit as an actor. Refused to budge when he requested a reasonable salary increase. To rub salt in the wound, they wanted him to promote all of their films, including ones he wasn't in. Cagney was exhausted. He left Hollywood behind and returned to his old haunts in New York. James had returned to New York in an effort to recover from his ordeal in Hollywood. At the same time, his brother Bill was visiting with James in California. He wasn't merely maintaining a spotless pool, though. As a shaman for his famous brother, Bill played the role of agent. James was back on the Hollywood Express after Warner Brothers offered $1,000 a week, proving he was a better choice. Taxi was his debut feature film produced during the New Deal. Considering he was a complete novice behind the wheel, his portrayal of a raging cab driver in Taxi was ironic. Prior to filming, he was required to attend lessons. There is a line in Taxi that everyone gets wrong as well. He actually says, "Come out and take it, you dirty yellow," but people hear him say, "You dirty rat." However, that was his least concern. The price of pistol blanks was astronomical in the 1930s. Studios utilized live rounds in an effort to cut costs. The intention was clearly not to fire shots at your performers, but mishaps may occur. James had a terrifyingly near miss while filming Taxi. He wanted to leave Warner Brothers again because of that and his ongoing financial problems. His contract was, unfortunately, unbreakable. He chose to attempt an insane strategy. He even offered to do it for nothing. Free him from his contract, he only has to make 3 films. Surprisingly, Warner Brothers declined. At that point, the famous Frank Capra took over as director. James received a 3-figure salary increase. He reduced his film output to 4 per year, and he received enormous per-top billing for each of his films. I mean, surely James would be overjoyed. Very quickly, I'm afraid. James wasn't merely thinking about himself, you see. He witnessed studios putting extreme pressure on young actors, some of whom were barely teenagers. At that point, he joined forces with fellow actors like Humphrey Bogart to form the Guild, a union that fought for the rights of Hollywood's underdogs. The most influential studio moguls in town were going to be their opponents in this, believe me. After participating in the formation of the Screen Actors Guild, James Cagney continued to work for Warner Brothers as an actor, but 1934 was a bad year for him. He was pressured by the studio to break his contract and create 5 films in a single year. Another breach was when they hit him with second billing. While most performers would have been too chicken to challenge studios on their own, James did just that, accompanied by his brother William. Warner Brothers was sued by him. Months passed as the legal dispute continued. Leisure to follow his heart in farming. He purchased a property upstate since he had always wanted a simpler life. He enjoyed tending to the farm for a period of time. James, you see, could only take a break from the spotlight for a limited time. Farming was abandoned the moment a film deal was made. Grand National Films, a new studio, wanted to steal his talent, but this time it wasn't Warner Brothers. They presented another option. Instead, along with a portion of the earnings. James thought this was all in his head. Assuming the films were of high quality, he believed he had struck gold. But Warner Brothers was nothing compared to Grand National Films. William, his brother, continued the legal battle while he was in California. Success follows. After James prevailed in the litigation, Warner Brothers expressed their desire to have him return. The new offer they made was excellent. With only 2 films allowed each year and a budget of $150,000 each picture, he had complete creative control over his slate. Much to the relief of the innumerable actors who had endured comparable hardships, the studio system had finally paid off. He co-starred with Humphrey Bogart and the riotous dead-end kids in the 1938 film Angels with Dirty Faces. On set, these guys were notorious for getting into scrapes. The pants of Bogart were even taken by them. They learned the hard way when they attempted to mimic Cagney's antics. Line changes were second nature to the dead-end kids. Believed he could pull off the same feat with Cary Grant. As he watched, he realized that Cagney wasn't merely portraying a villain. Those savvy urbanites were legit. He let one fly, clocking the child square in the nose to end his shenanigans. Then the student stuck in a dead end recognized who was in charge. Even though he was a major player in Hollywood, he wouldn't stand for a bunch of jerks. The majority of viewers mistakenly believed they were familiar with James Cagney, the savage street bandit who hurled insults and fists. Everyone was in for a rude awakening in his next role. Hal Wallace, the show's producer, was hell-bent on documenting the life of the colossal George M. Cohan, the man who basically created the American musical on Broadway. Yankee Doodle Dandy would be the title of the picture, and You Dirty Rat would not be heard anywhere. Rather, with his regular roles, James would be singing and dancing. A patriotic film, Yankee Doodle Dandy took on a sense of urgency due to circumstances beyond its control. The first day of filming took place immediately following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor during World War II. The significance of sharing the narrative of this American showman felt much greater. Might this be their last chance to film as a free nation? Fortunately, no, but that stress really stoked the fires of creativity. James devoted himself fully to the part. In an unplanned scene, he starts tapping his feet to the music. He continued filming despite breaking a rib in another. He would stop at nothing to ensure the film's success. It was a huge success. He became the first actor to ever win an Oscar for a musical performance when he took home the trophy for Best Actor. He was even more motivated to succeed after winning the Oscar. He and his brother William, now feeling more confident, decided to pursue a wild ambition. Cagney Productions, their very own production firm. His role had expanded beyond that of star. He was now also the showrunner. In addition to his presidency of the Screen Actors Guild, he made time to entertain troops fighting overseas. The chaos continued, and although everything appeared to be falling into place at first, they eventually began to unravel. Cagney Productions made some films that bombed at the box office. He reluctantly signed the company over to Warner Brothers, his old enemies. Taking on the roles of the stereotypically damaged, strong characters was like starting all over. If you thought all that dancing and singing would calm Cagney down, you'd be wrong. When James Cagney became a true Hollywood icon in 1955, he was a cast member of Mr. Roberts. John Ford, the director, was notorious for both his superb films and his despotic outbursts. Ford threw down the gauntlet when he met Cagney at the airport. He later challenged Ford to that fight, prepared to throw hands if necessary, and said, "We're going to have some fun, you and I." He wasn't about to back down. Ford, fuming about Cagney's chronic tardiness, likely wanted to get physical, but he restrained himself. On the other hand, his next confrontation would not conclude amicably. Cagney kept releasing successful pictures until a comedic role finally broke him in 1962. In the film 1, 2, 3, Billy Wilder faced off against Horst Buchholz, a younger German actor who was determined to steal the show from the grizzled veteran. Cagney hung up his acting boots when filming concluded. Unfortunately, more difficult times were on the horizon. James Cagney was a loving family man underneath his tough guy personas. He tied the knot twice. He quickly regretted his first effort at marriage. He wed Frances Billy Vernon in 1922, but by 1931, their marriage had soured, and they filed for a divorce. The following year, in 1932, he wed the former dancer Jean Cagney. At last, it was for all time. That is, until 1986, when he passed away. They took in a son named James Jr. and a daughter named Kathleen through adoption. Unfortunately, family relationships were not always harmonious. 2 years before James S.R.'s demise was his son James Jr., who succumbed to a heart attack in 1984. For the older performer, the fact that they had been estranged caused him great anguish. Even his daughter Kathleen eventually began to distance herself from him. There were numerous sides to James Cagney. See, when Cagney was a young actor, he attended a soil conservation lecture, and it inspired him to do his best work when he wasn't in the limelight. Buying a 100-acre farm on Martha's Vineyard was even part of his feud with Warner Brothers. Billy, his wife, was doubtful at first, but she eventually came to adore the spot. Even Cagney fostered a story that he had armed guards to get away from his adoring admirers. Because of how well it worked, his friend Spencer Tracy nearly became stuck at the gate. He finally bought his 120-acre New York farm in 1955, fulfilling a lifelong ambition of his. The name Verney Farm was a combination of his own and Billy's maiden name. He did it all: farmed the land, produced livestock, etc. A true believer, he went so far as to receive an honorary degree in the field of agriculture. That, however, was not his sole interest. James was enamored with horses even though he was born in an era when cars were the norm. Even as a young boy, he had a passion for horses and went on to ranch Morgan's. Interestingly enough, he also enjoyed sailing, albeit he wasn't very good at it. On calm days I get seasick, and on other days I weather storms. He also said that he might have been content if he had been a starving artist instead of a movie star, as he liked painting. Because he thought himself an amateur, he would only give paintings as gifts to friends and never sell them. His health declined in 1955 when he suffered a small stroke and then a severe case of depression. His passions, dancing, riding, and painting, were suddenly taken away from him. It looked like everything was coming to a close, but destiny had another surprise in store. In 1981, he made a brief return to the film industry with Ragtime. He went to the United Kingdom to film his sequences, where he was met by a huge throng of yelling fans as he walked off the Queen Elizabeth II. It shocked the security team. Even more bizarre things were about to happen, but they had never witnessed anything like it for a star who hadn't made a film in 20 years. Unusual events transpired at the Queen Mother's birthday concert. He received a standing ovation from her. Furthermore, she deviated from convention by returning to the stage to see him. Although his star power remained untarnished, his time on this planet was limited. After a brilliant life, James Cagney tragically passed away from a heart attack on Easter Sunday, 1986. Attendees at his funeral ranged from the governor of New York to ballet great Mikhail Baryshnikov. Even President Reagan delivered the eulogy. Later on, though, the most shocking thing happened. Neither his daughters nor his son's family were spared the bombshell of his will. Billy, his wife of 64 years and business partner, received his whole fortune. An exceptional life came to a tumultuous close. How surprised were you by his story? Post a comment and tell us. If you enjoyed this in-depth look at Hollywood's past, please subscribe, like, and comment below for more content like this. For tuning in, I am grateful.